You know what gets me every single year? I'll look out at my garden beds in mid-July and half my crops are getting absolutely shredded. Chewed leaves on the beans. Tomato plants barely producing. And it's not just one pest. It's like they're organizing a full invasion while I'm standing there spraying something that barely moves the needle. 24 years, I did exactly what everyone told me to do. I'd replant the damaged sections. I'd till everything under in the fall thinking I was resetting the system. And honestly, it worked fine most seasons, some years great, but there was always this background hum of problem solving that never quite went away, always fighting something. Then I spent time in Lancaster County watching how actual Amish growers run their operations, and I noticed something that stopped me cold. Their plants looked different. Not just healthier, structurally different, thicker stems, darker foliage, and the pest pressure, barely visible. They weren't spraying anything, weren't doing emergency transplants, just walking their rows like the garden was already solved. Standing there looking at an Amish gardener's tomato rows, barely a nibble on the leaves, productive as anything, and he just walks past without stopping, without checking, without the constant vigilance I'm used to. And I'm thinking, what do they actually know that I completely missed? What system are they running that makes this look effortless? Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly what they're doing differently and how you can apply it to your tiny space, so you can keep pests out without ever reaching for chemicals, pull genuine abundance from limited square footage, and stop treating your beds like they're constantly on the edge of collapse. Stick around to the very end because I'm sharing the exact transplant protection technique that changes everything, the specific soil recipe they use when creating new beds, and a method for establishing pest-resistant conditions using nothing but what's already available to you. The farming communities around Holmes County, Ohio, there's a guiding principle called DEMOT, which translates to humility, but specifically humility toward natural systems. It's the idea that you're not trying to dominate the garden, you're trying to work with what's already trying to work. Now, I'm not here to preach religion or philosophy, but here's why this matters for your tiny garden. When you spray pesticide to kill the aphids on your beans, till your soil every season to reset it, or plant the same crops in the same spots year after year, you're doing something that feels like control, but actually is overriding the entire biological network that keeps your garden stable. You're killing the beneficial insects that eat the pests. You're destroying the fungal systems that feed your plants. You're treating the soil like a blank slate instead of a living community. Growers around Holmes County figured this out through 300+ years of continuous observation, and what modern soil science and entomology are now confirming is something researchers at Ohio State University have documented. Gardens that maintain biological diversity and fungal networks experience 60–70% fewer pest outbreaks without any chemical intervention. The research is clear. The system works because it's actually a system, not a series of isolated problems to solve. Here's how it works at a biological level. Mycorrhizal networks, fungal threads that connect plant roots underground, do one thing: they trade nutrients for sugars. Your plants feed the fungus. The fungus feeds your plants minerals they can't access on their own. When you till soil aggressively or spray broad-spectrum pesticides, you're killing those networks. Without them, your plants become weak, pest-susceptible, and dependent on you constantly adding inputs. With them intact, your plants are resilient. That's Holmes County thinking applied to gardening. Growers there don't have access to modern fungicides or genetically modified seeds. They're not using drone technology or soil sensors. They're just choosing to build systems instead of fight problems. Build soil life instead of sterilize it. Rotate crops instead of replant monoculture. Except that some pests exist and design for resilience instead of eradication. That shift in thinking changed everything for me. I stopped seeing my garden as a battlefield where I needed superior firepower and started seeing it as a workspace where I could design the conditions so the right things naturally thrived and the wrong things naturally struggled. And it didn't require buying a single product. Step 1. Don't till. Layer instead. Here's why: tilling destroys the fungal networks feeding your plants, fragments bacteria, and germinates 1,000 dormant weed seeds. The Amish just stack compost on top. No destruction. The soil biology moves in on its own. This single choice, layering instead of tilling, changes everything about how your garden responds. 1. Layer 2-3 inches of aged compost directly over existing soil. No digging. No tilling. To apply in late fall or early spring, minimum 3-4 weeks before planting. This gives fungi time to colonize downward. 3. Press it down tight, hands or rake, so compost contacts soil directly. No air gaps, no floating material. Squared edges so you know the bed boundary, that's it. The rest happens underground. Now, here's where most people go wrong. They think no tilling means just dumping compost on top and planting immediately. If you do that, you end up with loose, unstable beds where transplants fall over and water just runs off the sides instead of soaking in. Instead, layer it, press it, and wait. Let gravity and biology do the integration for you. That's the difference. You'll know this is working when you dig down 4-5 inches, and you see the boundary between your new compost layer and the native soil starting to blur, when the darker, richer color is creeping into the layer below. That's mycorrhizal colonization happening. The smell should shift from fresh compost to rich, earthy, almost sweet. That's your signal the system is alive. To recap, 2-3 inches of aged compost, layered directly on existing soil, pressed for contact, applied 3-4 weeks before planting, no tilling required. You can verify depth by pressing a ruler or stick straight down. It should meet resistance right at the soil interface. That foundation is established and biology is moving in. You move to step 2, where you're selecting which crops actually thrive in tiny spaces. Because not all 6 of these crops perform the same way when you're working with limited square footage. Here's step 2, and this is where you stop following the seed packet's one-size-fits-all spacing and start thinking like an Amish grower who's maximizing production from constrained space. Most of us plant whatever variety we find at the garden center or whatever the seed packet recommends. But here's what's actually happening. You're planting varieties bred for commercial farms where space is unlimited and mechanical harvesting is the goal, not for your tiny bed where every inch matters. The monoculture mindset treats all corn the same, all potatoes the same, all cabbage the same. But there's a massive asterisk difference between varieties, and the Amish know exactly which ones compress yield into tiny footprints. 1. Corn plant Amish dent. 4-5 feet tall, multiple ears per stalk, bred for density. That's a 2. Potato. Choose red Norland early season, 60-70 day harvest. Fingerling size, denser tubers, succession plant for 2 crops per season. 3. For pumpkins and large cabbage, this is where you stop asterisk. In a tiny garden, full-size pumpkins, which need 6,100 plus square feet each, and massive cabbage heads, which take up 2x 2 feet per plant, are space killers. Skip them. Instead, grow delicata squash asterisk, same nutrition, 1/6 the footprint, or mini cabbage heads like asterisk Gonzales, full cabbage flavor, 1 pound heads, 8-inch spacing. 4. For sunflowers, plant asterisk branching varieties asterisk like asterisk Moulin Rouge or Teddy Bear that produce 8-12 smaller flowers per plant instead of single-stem giants, and they stay under 4 feet tall. 5. For garlic, choose asterisk hardneck varieties asterisk like asterisk German extra hardy asterisk. They're smaller cloves but denser, produce scapes you can eat, and you can plant them at 4-inch spacing instead of 6, which means 40% more production per bed. 6. Plant in early spring for spring crops, and time succession plantings 2-3 weeks apart so you're harvesting continuously instead of all at once. Here's where most people go wrong. They see a beautiful picture of a massive pumpkin or a huge cabbage on a seed packet and think that's the goal. If you plant it, you end up with 2 or 3 plants taking up your entire tiny garden, and you get one harvest instead of consistent production. Instead, choose dense varieties that compress genetics into smaller footprints. You're not growing for the county fair. You're growing for continuous harvest from limited space. You'll know you've picked the right varieties when the seed packet says compact, early season, determinate, or high yield per square foot. If it says sprawling, requires full-size spacing, or days to maturity, is over 80 days with no succession option, skip it. The right varieties will feel almost too close together when you first plant them. That's the signal you're using space efficiently. To recap, corn at 4-5 feet tall max Amish dent varieties, potatoes as early season fingerlings 60-70 day harvest, skip full-size pumpkins plant delicata instead, cabbage as mini heads 8-inch spacing, sunflowers as branching types under 4 feet, garlic at 4-inch spacing with hardneck varieties. Write these variety names down, they're your actual competitive edge. That you've selected varieties built for density. Step 3 is configuring your spacing, so you're planting them closer than the seed packet says, but not so close they choke each other out. That's where the real system shows up. Here's step 3, and this is where you abandon the follow the seed packet mindset and start spacing like someone who's actually trying to maximize a tiny footprint. Most of us follow seed packet spacing rules religiously. 6 inches for lettuce, 12 inches for cabbage, 18 inches for tomatoes. But here's what's actually happening. Seed packets are written for standard gardens where space is cheap and labor costs matter. They give you safe spacing that guarantees success with zero attention. But in a tiny garden, that's wasteful. The Amish use dense bed planning instead of rows. They watch how mature plants actually relate to each other, and they space for maximum production, not maximum ease. That means tighter spacing, but with the right system to support it. 1. Corn 8-inch grid. A single 4x4 bed holds 25 plants instead of 8, 3x density in the same space. 2. Potatoes 10-inch grid. You'll get 30-40 small tubers instead of 10 large ones. Same biomass, continuous harvest instead of one bulk pull. 3. For cabbage, mini head varieties, space at 8 inches on center in a staggered grid. At that spacing, a 4x4 bed fits 16-18 plants instead of 4, and you get 16-18 1-pound heads instead of 4 massive ones. 4. For sunflowers branching varieties, space at 12 inches in a grid. They'll create a canopy that shades out weeds and supports each other rather than competing. 5. For garlic, space at 4-inch intervals in rows within the bed, creating a dense carpet of plants. Mature garlic foliage creates its own mulch. 6. The critical detail. When you plant this densely, the mature leaf canopy should just barely touch, not overlap, not gap. You want the leaves to create a continuous shade layer over the soil which conserves moisture and suppresses weeds. If there are gaps, they're too far apart. If leaves are overlapping heavily, they're too close. Here's where most people go wrong. They assume dense planting means overcrowding and competition. If you plant too close, you end up with stunted, stressed plants and pest outbreaks. But here's the thing, the spacing I'm giving you isn't random. It's calculated so that when plants reach full maturity the leaf canopy just touches. That means while they're small, there's air flow. While they're establishing, there's no competition. Once they're mature and strong, the canopy protects the soil. Instead of planting for baby plant size, plant for mature plant footprint. You'll know this is working when you get to about week 4-5 of growth and the bed still looks spacious, like there's room to walk between plants. If it looks crowded now, they were too close. But by week 8-10, the canopy should be starting to touch at the edges, and by maturity, light should barely penetrate to the soil. That's the signal the spacing is correct. To recap, corn at 8-inch grid spacing, potatoes at 10-inch grid, mini cabbage at 8-inch staggered grid, sunflowers at 12-inch grid, garlic at 4-inch rows. Measure twice before planting. Mature leaf canopy should just touch. No overlap, no gaps. Verify spacing by measuring from plant center to plant center with a ruler or marked string. That your plants are configured to create continuous canopy. Step 4 is establishing the mulching system that keeps the soil alive, suppresses weeds, and lets you stop fighting bare soil forever. Here's step 4, and this is where you establish continuous ground cover that transforms bare soil into a living, productive system. And it's the difference between gardens that need constant work and gardens that run themselves. Of us either let bare soil sit exposed, which bakes out moisture, exposes weed seeds, kills biology, or we scramble to add mulch reactively when weeds start taking over. But here's what's actually happening. Bare soil is the enemy of productivity. It dries out, it compacts, it invites pests, and it requires you to water constantly and weed aggressively. The Amish and intensive gardeners use constant ground cover asterisk, either physical mulch or living cover crops, so the soil is never naked. This isn't optional detail, it's the foundation of the entire system. Layer, 3-4 inches of straw, not hay, laid tight against soil. This single layer solves 3 problems. Suppresses weeds, conserves moisture, and feeds the soil as it decomposes to maintain it continuously through the season. Every 3-4 weeks, add fresh straw to rebuild the layer. By July, you'll see almost 0 weeds pushing through. In late fall, switch to 6-8 inches of aged compost on top. This becomes both your winter cover and your spring bed refresh. 3. For succession plantings, mulch happens asterisk before you plant the next crop, not after. Lay straw, plant through it, establish the new crop. The mulch protects the young transplants and preserves moisture while they establish. 4. In late fall, instead of clearing mulch away, add a thick 6-8 inch layer of finished compost or aged manure on top of the decomposed straw. This becomes your winter cover and your spring bed refresh in one step, no tilling required. 5. The critical detail. Straw should touch soil directly, not sit on top of weeds or debris. If there's a gap between straw and soil, moisture won't wick up and weed seeds can germinate underneath. Clear the area first, then lay straw tight against everything. Here's where most people go wrong. They think one application of mulch is enough for the season. If you put mulch down in May and forget about it, by July it's half decomposed. Weeds are pushing through the gaps and you're back to fighting bare soil. Or they use hay instead of straw and end up with 1,000 new weeds from the hay seeds. Instead, maintain it continuously. Every 3-4 weeks, add fresh straw. It takes 10 minutes per bed, that's it. Consistent coverage beats one perfect application every time. You'll know this is working when you dig down through the mulch in week 6-8 and you see the straw partially decomposed, darkening, and the layer beneath it rich and dark, almost black. Smell it, it should smell like earth and mushrooms, not straw. When you water, the moisture should sink in immediately instead of beating up on the surface. By mid-season, you should be pulling almost 0 weeds. If weeds are still pushing through, your coverage is too thin or too patchy. To recap, 3-4 inches of straw applied immediately after planting, touching soil directly with no gaps, topped off every 3-4 weeks. Switch to 6-8 inches of compost in late fall as winter cover. Use straw, not hay. Measure depth with your hand or a ruler. Verify tight contact at plant bases, no gaps, no floating mulch. You've built the complete system. Soil that's alive and building, no tilling. Varieties selected for density, spacing configured for canopy coverage, and mulch keeping everything protected and moist. From here, it's observation and adjustment. The Amish part where you stop following rigid rules and start asterisk watching your garden talk to you. But that's what separates people who garden from people who asterisk understand their garden asterisk. Let me share some patterns I've noticed. Things I used to do the conventional way that the Amish approach handles completely differently. Most of us see aphids and spray immediately, but that kills the predatory insects about to solve the problem for you. The Amish watch first. They adjust the system, mulch, companions, soil strength, and let predators establish. Result: fewer applications needed because insects do the work. Plant cabbage with cabbage, potatoes with potatoes, perfect buffet for pests. The Amish plant functionally, cabbage with dill and basil, pest confusion, potatoes with borage, predatory attraction. Same space, built-in pest resistance. Clear every leaf, pull mulch back, keep edges bare. But that eliminates habitat for beneficial insects. The Amish leave functional mess, thick mulch, fallen leaves, living borders. Predatory beetles establish and work for you. Thing you might notice, your garden will have insects, aphids, beetles. But here's what changes. With thick mulch, healthy soil, and diverse plant companions, predatory insects establish too. The balance works against pests naturally. That's why you stop spraying. Not because pests disappear, but because the system controls them. We see yellowing and add nitrogen, but the soil biology is actually dead. The Amish build soil first, compost, mulch, rotation, and plants respond. They're reading the plant as feedback about the soil, not as a separate problem. These conventional patterns won't ruin your garden. They're just leaving production on the table. When you shift these, from spray first to system first, from monoculture to mixed function, from sterile to alive, you stop managing and start designing. Before I learned this system, I was getting maybe 20-30 pounds of usable produce from a 4x4 bed. Half of it was pest damaged. My soil stayed depleted. I'd add compost, plant, harvest, and by next year it was back to square one. I was fighting the garden constantly. Now that same 4x4 bed yields 60-80 pounds of produce per season. My soil improves every single year instead of collapsing. Pest pressure is maybe 10% of what it used to be. I'm not fighting, I'm harvesting. Here's the progression. Week 1-2, asterisk compost layer is down and settling, green shoots pushing through the straw mulch. First signs of biological activity in the soil asterisk month 1. Asterisk plants are 6-8 inches tall, dense canopy is starting to form. You can already see the spacing is working. Light barely hits the soil anymore asterisk month 2-3. Asterisk first harvests are happening, early potatoes, garlic scapes, succession cabbage. The mulch layer is darkening and decomposing. You realize the system is actually asterisk working asterisk. Month 4-5, asterisk full abundance. Multiple crops maturing simultaneously, canopy is thick enough that almost zero weeds are pushing through, soil smell is rich and alive. Asterisk year 1 complete, asterisk you've harvested continuously. You've succession planted. You've seen how the system responds. Soil has visibly improved. Here's what a single 4x4 bed produces in this system. Corn, 25 plants at 8-inch spacing. Asterisk 40-50 ears of fresh corn asterisk potatoes, 16 plants at 10-inch spacing, asterisk 35-45 pounds of fingerlings mini cabbage, 16 plants at 8-inch spacing, asterisk 16 heads at 1 pound each garlic, 80 cloves at 4-inch spacing, asterisk 12-15 bulbs asterisk sunflowers, branching, 12-inch spacing. Asterisk 16-20 stems with multiple flowers per stem asterisk plus. Asterisk continuous succession harvest if you replant after first crop 1 bed. 4 crops rotated through the year. 81-20 pounds total produce. Most people get 15-20 from the same space using conventional spacing. My best year was about 95 pounds from 2 4x4 beds plus succession planting. Amish growers I know who have been doing this for decades consistently hit 121-50 pounds from the same footprint. The difference is, they've spent 30+ years building their soil health. They're disciplined with density and succession timing, and they're not learning. They're executing a perfected system. I'm still learning. You will be too. Here's what this spacing produces in a single 4x4 bed over 1 season. Corn, 40-50 ears potatoes, 35-45 pounds mini cabbage, 16 1-pound heads garlic, 12-15 bulbs 1 bed, through succession planting, yields 81-20 pounds of produce. Most gardens with traditional spacing yield 15-20 pounds from the same space. If you want more of these deep dives into how traditional communities have solved the same problems we're facing in tiny spaces, how the Amish think about soil and systems differently than we do, and practical wisdom from people who have been doing this successfully for generations, hit subscribe. I drop new videos every week on this channel, and the bell will make sure you actually see them. Here's what I want to know from you. In the comments below, tell me, have you tried any of these crops in a tiny space before? What surprised you? What's your biggest garden frustration right now? Is it pests, soil quality, spacing confusion, or something else entirely? Which of these varieties are you most interested in trying? I read every single comment, and I use what you tell me to build the next videos. If this changed how you think about your garden, if you're realizing you've been fighting problems that a better system would have already solved, please share this with someone who's been wanting to start gardening but feels overwhelmed by all the conflicting advice. That's the person who needs to see this. Thanks for spending time with me. I'll see you in the next one.